They called us the pet species across every galactic channel. Laughed at our primitive ships, mocked our simple weapons, dismissed our military as adorable toy soldiers playing war games. The Hegemony Council broadcasted live to trillion viewer audiences. Humans were the galaxy's comic relief, barely worth conquering. But the Zephyrians made one critical error in their arrogance. They forgot that sometimes, the most dangerous predator is the one everyone underestimates. This is the story of how humanity went from galactic laughingstock to the most feared military force in known space. All because of one public insult, one sleepless night, and the terrifying realization that humans don't just fight wars, we perfect them. Welcome to the overnight reckoning that rewrote the rules of galactic warfare forever. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the massive holographic display that showed the Galactic Council's emergency session. The chamber buzzed with representatives from 47 different species, their various forms creating a colorful tapestry of alien life. But, today, all eyes were focused on the central podium where High Commander Zyxthera of the Zephyrian Empire stood with 4 arms crossed, his crystalline exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's lights. Fellow council members, Zyxthera's voice echoed through the translation systems, each species hearing it in their native tongue. We gather today to discuss the amusing situation with the so-called human military force. Laughter rippled through the chamber. The Korthak delegation made their clicking sounds of amusement, while the gas-based ethereals pulsed with colors that indicated mirth. Even the normally stoic Rex representatives allowed themselves subtle head tilts that passed for their version of chuckling. Chen felt her jaw tighten as she watched from the human observation deck, relegated to the back corner like an afterthought. Earth had been granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council 5 years ago, but they were still treated like children who had somehow wandered into an adults' meeting. The humans, Zyxthera continued, his mandibles clicking in what the translation system rendered as condescending laughter, have requested permission to establish what they call a defensive fleet in their home system. They claim it's necessary for their protection. More laughter. A holographic display materialized above the podium, showing human ships alongside vessels from major galactic powers. The difference was embarrassing. Where Zephyrian dreadnoughts stretched for kilometers and bristled with energy weapons that could crack moons, human ships looked like toys in comparison. The largest human vessel, the Defiance itself, was barely 300 meters long. Their largest warship, Zyxthera gestured dismissively at the hologram, carries what they proudly called nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons! As if splitting atoms could threaten ships protected by quantum shielding and dimensional armor. The laughter grew louder. Several species began making sounds that their translation systems converted to various forms of how cute and adorable. Their military strategy, the Zephyrian commander continued, appears to consist entirely of pointing sharp sticks at very fast speeds and making things explode. They have no understanding of psionic warfare, dimensional manipulation, or even basic energy field dynamics. It's like watching primitive cave dwellers trying to fight starships with rocks and fire. Chen's knuckles were white as she gripped the railing. Behind her, Captain Marcus Rodriguez of the UES Retribution muttered something under his breath that would have gotten him court-martialed in front of civilian ears. But Zyxthera wasn't finished. I propose we treat the human military exactly as it deserves to be treated. As a curiosity. A pet project. Perhaps we could set aside a small sector where they can play their war games safely, far from anything important. We could even provide them with some decommissioned cargo vessels to use as enemy ships so they can practice their, what do they call it? Shooting things real good? The chamber erupted. Even species that were normally enemies of the Zephyrians were laughing together. The Quantum Collective, beings of pure energy who rarely expressed emotion, were flickering in patterns that indicated deep amusement. The insect-like hive queens were producing harmonious buzzing sounds that their culture used for mockery. In fact, Zyxthera raised his voice above the din. I hereby officially designate the human military as the Galactic Council's official entertainment division. Perhaps they could provide comic relief between serious military discussions. The formal motion appeared on every delegate's screen. Chen watched in horror as vote after vote came in. Green lights for approval swept across the chamber like a wave. Even species that had previously shown respect for human diplomacy were voting yes. It wasn't malicious, it was worse. They genuinely thought it was a harmless joke. The final tally appeared: 847 votes in favor, 12 abstentions, 0 against. Motion carried, announced the Council's AI moderator. The human military is hereby classified as a recreational organization within Galactic Council records. All military aid requests will be redirected to the Entertainment and Cultural Exchange Committee. Chen felt something break inside her chest. Not her heart was still beating, still pumping blood filled with 5 generations of military tradition. Her great-great-grandmother had stormed Normandy. Her great-grandfather had held the line in Korea. Her father had led peacekeeping missions in the colony wars. Every generation of her family had proven themselves when the stakes were highest. But this was different. This wasn't about proving human courage or human sacrifice. This was about proving human competence to beings who had already decided humans were incompetent. Admiral, Captain Rodriguez's voice was carefully controlled. Your orders? Chen stared at the display as the session moved on to other business. The human military, every ship, every soldier, every strategy they developed, had just been officially classified as a joke. But, as she watched ZYXthera accept congratulations from other delegates, she noticed something they had all missed. The Zephyrian had just made the biggest tactical error in galactic history. He had given humanity something it had never possessed before: complete invisibility. No one watches a joke closely. No one prepares for a threat they've dismissed as entertainment. No one builds defenses against an enemy they've decided isn't really an enemy. Stand down from observation status, Chun ordered quietly. Set course for Earth. Maximum speed. Admiral? Rodriguez looked confused. Aren't we supposed to stay for the rest of the session? Chen turned away from the display, her mind already racing through possibilities. Captain, how long would it take to retrofit our entire fleet for non-standard operations? What kind of non-standard operations? The kind that aren't in any galactic military manual. The kind that beings who've never had to fight for survival wouldn't think to defend against. She looked back at the chamber one more time, memorizing ZYXthera's smug expression. The kind that proves sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one everyone underestimates. As the Defiance turned toward Earth, Chen began composing a message to Fleet Command. It would be brief, encoded, and sent on a frequency that no other species monitored because they assumed humans had nothing important to say. Emergency Protocol 7, she dictated to the communications officer. All human military assets to begin immediate retrofit and retraining. New operational parameters: assume all observers are hostile. Assume all technology is compromised. Assume all standard tactics are known and countered. We are now operating under the assumption that we are completely on our own. The message went out across human space, bouncing from ship to ship, from station to colony to Earth itself. Within hours, every human military installation was receiving the same orders: prepare for war against an enemy that doesn't think you're capable of fighting one. In the depths of human space, projects that had been theoretical began moving to implementation. Weapons systems that had been considered too dangerous or unnecessarily destructive suddenly became priority research. Military strategies that had been dismissed as too aggressive for galactic politics were dusted off and refined. Chen stood on her bridge and watched Earth grow larger on the screen. Somewhere behind them, the Galactic Council was still laughing about humanity's adorable military. They would probably laugh for quite a while. But Chen knew something about humans that the galaxy had failed to learn in 5 years of contact: when you back a human into a corner, when you threaten everything they've worked for, when you dismiss their ability to protect what they love, they don't get discouraged. They get creative. And creativity, as the galaxy was about to learn, could be far more dangerous than any conventional weapon. The secure facility buried 3 kilometers beneath the Sahara Desert had no official name. To the few who knew of its existence, it was simply called the Workshop. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent the last 8 hours in Conference Room 0, surrounded by holographic displays showing technical specifications that would have given most galactic engineers nightmares. The problem, said General Harrison, his weathered face grim in the blue glow of the displays, is that we're fighting their war with their rules. They have energy shields? We shoot at energy shields. They have dimensional armor? We try to punch through dimensional armor. We're playing a game where they've already figured out how to win. Around the table sat the most brilliant and dangerous minds humanity had produced. Dr. Vasquez, whose work in theoretical physics had been buried under classification levels so deep they didn't have names. Colonel Sarah Kim, whose psychological warfare techniques had been deemed too effective for conventional use. Professor James Chen, whose understanding of alien biology had led to research that made bioweapons treaties look like gentle suggestions. So we changed the game, Dr. Vasquez said simply. We stopped playing by galactic warfare conventions entirely. The holographic display shifted, showing the quantum shield technology that every major galactic power used. Elegant, efficient, and designed to deflect or absorb energy-based attacks. Quantum shields work by analyzing incoming energy signatures and creating counter-frequencies. They're essentially immune to any conventional weapon we could build. But? General Harrison prompted. But, they were designed by beings who think in terms of energy and matter. Vasquez smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. They've never encountered a species that learned to weaponize concepts. The display changed again, showing a complex schematic that looked more like a philosophical diagram than a weapon blueprint. What if we don't attack their shields with energy? What if we attack the mathematical foundations that make their shields possible? Colonel Kim leaned forward. Explain. Quantum shields rely on predictive algorithms to generate counter-frequencies. But, those algorithms assume that incoming attacks follow the basic laws of physics as the galactic community understands them. Vasquez manipulated the display, showing probability cascades and mathematical proofs. What if we create weapons that violate those assumptions? Professor Chen's eyes lit up. Paradox weapons. Exactly. Missiles that are simultaneously matter and energy. Projectiles that exist in quantum superposition until the moment of impact. Attacks that retroactively change their own launch conditions. Vasquez was getting excited now, her words coming faster. We turn physics into a weapon. General Harrison rubbed his temples. Doctor, with all due respect, that sounds insane. Good, said a new voice from the doorway. Admiral Chen walked in, still wearing her dress uniform from the council session. Because sanity is what they're prepared for. The room fell silent as Chen moved to the head of the table. She'd been in transit for 18 hours, but her eyes were sharp and focused. I've just watched humanity get officially classified as a galactic joke. Every major power in the galaxy thinks we're harmless children playing with toy weapons. She activated her personal display, showing recordings from the council session. High Commander ZYX-Thera has just given us the greatest tactical advantage in military history, complete and total underestimation. The recordings played, showing the laughter, the dismissive gestures, the casual cruelty of beings who saw humans as barely more than amusing pets. But Chen wasn't showing them for emotional impact. She was showing them for intelligence. Look at their body language. Look at their security postures. Look at how they position themselves relative to each other. Chen highlighted specific moments in the recordings. These beings have been fighting the same war for thousands of years. Energy weapons, quantum shields, dimensional tactics. They've optimized their entire military philosophy around countering known threats. Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. And they've never encountered an unknown threat. More than that, Chen continued. They've never encountered a species that learned warfare through necessity rather than tradition. Every other galactic power inherited their military technology from previous civilizations. They've been fighting with fundamentally the same tools for millennia. She brought up tactical displays showing typical galactic battles. Ships maneuvered in elegant formations, exchanging precise energy barrages while their shields flared and adapted. It looked almost choreographed, like a deadly dance where everyone knew the steps. Humans learned warfare from scratch. We started with sticks and stones and worked our way up. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy came from someone asking, how do we kill the thing that's trying to kill us? We never had the luxury of inherited solutions. Colonel Ken was studying the alien battle formations. They're predictable. They follow protocols. Because protocols work when everyone follows the same rules, Chen agreed. But, what happens when someone doesn't know the rules exist? General Harrison was beginning to smile, and it wasn't a nice smile. They break them accidentally. The next 12 hours saw humanity's military doctrine quietly undergo the most radical transformation in the species' history. In facilities hidden across Earth and the colonies, projects that had been theoretical became urgent priorities. The first breakthrough came from the Lunar Research Station, where Dr. Yuki Tanaka had been working on what she called aggressive uncertainty principles. Her team had successfully created a projectile that existed in quantum superposition. It was simultaneously a high-explosive missile, a kinetic penetrator, and an electromagnetic pulse until the moment it interacted with its target. The beautiful part, Dr. Tanaka explained via hologram to the emergency conference, is that it's not just unpredictable to the enemy. It's unpredictable to us too. Even we don't know what kind of attack it will be until it hits. From the Europa facility came news of successful tests of temporal displacement ordnance, weapons that were fired in the present but arrived in the past, making them impossible to intercept because they hit their targets before they were launched. The asteroid belt mining operations had repurposed their industrial equipment into what they were calling physics violation engines, devices that created localized areas where the fundamental constants of reality became variable. But, perhaps the most terrifying development came from the deep space research vessel Pandora's Box, where a team of human scientists had successfully weaponized mathematics itself. Their logical paradox torpedoes carried warheads that didn't explode. They convinced their targets that they had already exploded. Admiral Chen reviewed the reports flowing in from across human space. Every facility, every research team, every military installation was contributing something to what was rapidly becoming the most unconventional arsenal in galactic history. Status report, she requested from her aide. Ma'am, we now have 17 different types of weapons that violate the standard laws of physics, 12 defensive systems that work by making attacks philosophically impossible, and 8 ship modifications that allow our vessels to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Chen nodded. And our conventional forces? Completely retrofitted. Every human military vessel is now equipped with at least 3 reality-bending weapon systems. Our soldiers are training in combat techniques that assume the enemy's advantages don't actually exist. And our tactics manuals have been rewritten from scratch. Time frame for full deployment? 36 hours, Admiral. Chen felt a grim satisfaction. In less than 2 days, humanity had transformed from a recreational military organization into something that would have made cosmic horrors think twice about picking a fight. But, the real test would come when the galaxy realized that the species they'd dismissed as harmless children had just become the most dangerous military force in known space. That test was coming sooner than anyone expected. Long-range sensors had detected massive Zephyrian fleet movements toward human space. High Commander ZYX, it seemed, had decided that his joke about human military capabilities would be even funnier if backed up with a demonstration of real galactic power. He was bringing a full battle fleet to human space to show the galaxy exactly how helpless Earth's defenses really were. It would be a live broadcast, transmitted across the galaxy as entertainment. The Great Zephyrian Empire putting the human military in its proper place. What he didn't know was that he was about to become the first galactic power to encounter humanity's new operational doctrine: when conventional warfare is impossible, make the impossible conventional. Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, now retrofitted with weapons that existed in multiple dimensions and shields powered by directed stubbornness. Around her, the human fleet was taking positions that would have been suicide against conventional enemies but were perfect for fighting opponents who didn't believe they were fighting at all. Admiral, her communications officer reported, were receiving a transmission from High Commander ZYX. He's requesting permission to enter human space for what he calls a demonstration of proper military procedure. Chen smiled. It was time to show the galaxy what happened when you underestimate a species that had learned to turn impossibility into ammunition. High Commander ZYX stood on the command deck of the ZES Inevitable Victory, surrounded by the most advanced war machines the Zephyrian Empire had ever constructed. Through the massive viewports, he could see his fleet arranged in perfect formation, 12 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, and over 200 support vessels. Each ship gleamed with quantum armor and bristled with weapons capable of glassing planets. Broadcasting to all galactic networks, his communications officer announced, "Viewership is at 2.4 trillion and climbing." ZYX preened. This would be his masterpiece, a demonstration of overwhelming military superiority that would cement Zephyrian dominance while providing the galaxy with thoroughly entertaining footage of human incompetence. The human fleet was already visible on long-range sensors, 37 small vessels arranged in what appeared to be a completely random pattern. "Begin recording my address," he commanded. Across the galaxy, billions of beings tuned in to watch what promised to be the most one-sided military demonstration in recent history. The broadcast opened with ZYX's imposing figure against the backdrop of his massive fleet. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began, his forearms spread wide, "today we provide a service to our galactic community. We will demonstrate the proper response when primitive species attempt to play at warfare with their betters." In the observation deck of the UES Defiance, Admiral Chen watched the broadcast with grim amusement. Around her, her senior staff looked calm but alert. None of them looked like they were about to participate in their own slaughter. "The human military," ZYX continued, "has requested the right to defend their home system against superior forces. We have generously agreed to demonstrate why this is impossible." Chen activated her ship's communication system. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Chen. ZYX is about to learn the first rule of human military doctrine." "What's that, Admiral?" came Captain Rodriguez's voice from the Retribution. "Never give a demonstration until you understand what you're demonstrating." The Zephyrian fleet moved into attack formation with mechanical precision. Every ship took its designated position, every weapon system powered up according to standard galactic military protocols. It was textbook perfect, exactly what any military academy in the galaxy would teach as optimal fleet engagement doctrine. "Human vessels," ZYX broadcast on all frequencies, "you have 60 seconds to surrender and prepare to be escorted to designated internment facilities. Your cooperation will be noted in my report to the Galactic Council." Admiral Chen's response was broadcast on the same frequency, ensuring every viewer across the galaxy could hear it. "High Commander, we respectfully decline. Please proceed with your demonstration." ZYX mandibles clicked with amusement. The galaxy's viewers were treated to enhanced sensor readings showing the massive disparity in firepower. The graphics were almost comical. Human ships appeared as tiny dots compared to the massive Zephyrian vessels. "Very well," ZYX announced. "Let this serve as education for any other primitive species with delusions of military adequacy. All ships, commence primary bombardment." The Zephyrian fleet opened fire simultaneously. Hundreds of energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and quantum disruptors streaked toward the human formation. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the inevitable light show as human ships were vaporized. Instead, something impossible happened. The attacks simply stopped existing. Not deflected. Not absorbed. They reached a certain point in space and ceased to be, as if reality had decided they were no longer relevant. Across the galaxy, military experts stared at their screens in confusion. Energy readings showed the weapons had been fired. Telemetry confirmed they had traveled through space. But they had simply ended, without interacting with anything. "Impossible," ZYX snarled. "All ships, maximum firepower. Target their largest vessel." This time, the entire fleet concentrated its fire on the Defiance. Enough energy to crack a moon converged on Admiral Chen's ship. The galaxy watched, expecting to see the human flagship obliterated in spectacular fashion. Instead, the Defiance flickered slightly and, then, broadcast a response, "Thank you for the targeting data. Returning fire." What happened next rewrote every military textbook in galactic space. The human ships didn't fire conventional weapons. They fired concepts. The UES Retribution launched what its crew called a causality reversal torpedo. The weapon traveled backward through time, arriving at its target before it was fired. The ZES dominant power simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but edited out of reality as if it had never been built. The UES Endeavour fired mathematical impossibility shells, projectiles that convinced the Zephyrian ship's quantum armor that it was actually made of tissue paper. 12 dreadnoughts suddenly found themselves protected by materials with the defensive properties of wet cardboard. The UES Relentless deployed physics violation mines that created localized areas where the speed of light was variable, where gravity flowed upward, and where cause preceded effect. Zephyrian ships entering these zones found their own weapons firing backward through time to destroy themselves in the past. But the most devastating attack came from the Defiance itself. Admiral Chen had authorized the deployment of humanity's most terrifying creation, a logical paradox warhead that didn't just destroy its target, it made its target's existence philosophically inconsistent. The warhead struck the inevitable victory and immediately began working. The ship's computers started receiving error messages like "cannot exist," "violates basic principles of reality," and "existence denied, insufficient logical foundation." The massive dreadnought began fading from reality as the universe itself decided it made no sense. ZYX watched in horror as his flagship's crew began reporting system failures that shouldn't be possible. "Hull breach on Deck 17, one officer reported, then paused in confusion. "Wait, Deck 17 doesn't exist." It never existed. "But we're still breached there." "Weapons offline," another officer called out. "Also, our weapons were never online. In fact, we've never had weapons. But we're definitely out of ammunition for the weapons we don't have." Across the galaxy, the viewing audience watched in stunned silence as the mighty Zephyrian fleet was systematically deconstructed by attacks that violated every known law of physics, logic, and common sense. The human ships moved through the battle with impossible grace, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously, firing weapons that arrived before they were launched, and defending themselves by making enemy attacks philosophically untenable. "This is Admiral Chen to High Commander ZYX, came the calm voice over all frequencies. "You are correct that we humans don't understand conventional galactic warfare. We've never learned energy field dynamics or dimensional manipulation. We don't fight with the same tools you do." The transmission continued as Zephyrian ships continued to vanish, malfunction, or simply decide they didn't want to exist anymore. "But you made one crucial error in your assessment. You assumed that not knowing the rules was a weakness." On the dying bridge of the inevitable victory, ZYX stared at his tactical displays as his fleet was systematically erased from reality by attacks that his computers couldn't even categorize. Some ships were being destroyed. Others were being unconstructed. A few were being politely asked to leave reality, and were apparently complying. Humans, Admiral Chen's voice continued, learned warfare by fighting for survival against impossible odds. "We learned that when conventional tactics don't work, you make unconventional tactics work. And when the laws of physics are against you." The last functional Zephyrian vessel, a cruiser that was somehow existing backward through time while firing weapons made of crystallized mathematics, suddenly found itself facing a human torpedo that carried a simple message: "Please stop existing." "Thank you." The cruiser considered this request, found it reasonable, and obligingly ceased. "You changed the laws of physics." Silence filled the calm channels. Across the galaxy, trillions of beings stared at their screens showing empty space where the mighty Zephyrian fleet had been. The human ships remained, apparently undamaged, floating in formation around Earth like they had just finished a routine training exercise. "This concludes today's demonstration," Admiral Chen announced to the galaxy. Any other species wishing to test human military capabilities are welcome to make an appointment through proper diplomatic channels. Please note that we are still classified as a recreational organization, so any military engagements will be treated as entertainment events and broadcast live across the galaxy. She paused, and, when she spoke again, there was steel in her voice that carried across star systems. "High Commander ZYX, you wanted to show the galaxy what happens when primitive species play at warfare. Mission accomplished." In the emergency session of the Galactic Council that convened 6 hours later, the motion to reclassify human military forces passed unanimously. The new designation was Species of Extreme Caution, do not engage under any circumstances. But Admiral Chen's favorite part of the whole affair came 3 days later, when she received a formal diplomatic communication from the Zephyrian Empire. It was brief, written in 17 different languages to ensure there was no possibility of misunderstanding. We apologize. We surrender. Please don't hurt us anymore. She framed it and hung it on the wall of her ready room, right next to a photo of her great-great-grandmother storming the beaches of Normandy. Some things, Chen reflected, never changed. When you backed a human into a corner, when you threatened what they protected, when you dismissed their ability to fight back, they didn't just fight. They redefined what fighting meant. And, sometimes, that made all the difference in the galaxy.